Hi everybody, it's Franny and we're back with our friend's 1969 Volkswagen Beetle. In the last episode we got our bearings in back here and we got our shaft back in, but we hadn't done the brakes. So we want to get to that. But as you can see, the hub is already on. So we're going to go back in time a little bit and I'm going to refit these rear brakes. And also I want to show you that super cool tool that torques down these castle nuts. And we also have to do the other side as well. Then after all that, we're going to get to the output shafts on the differential, on the transmission. So those seals in there are leaking on both sides. So what we're going to do is pull those flanges off, pull the seals out and replace them and put everything back together. It's going to be pretty sweet. And we also have to take a look at those axles as well, take a look at our CB joints and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's what we're going to get to on this episode. So let's go back in time and get started. Well, we can finally get to the brakes here. We still need to clean all of this and we have a bad cylinder up here. Let's start by taking our cylinder off and just get it out of the way. It'll just make the cleaning a bit easier. I had a comment on the last video that said, well, why don't you remove the bleeder? Well, that's a great idea. If I do, I've got better access. So let's go ahead and pull this guy off. And that allows us to use the correct tool here to loosen this guy up. So it's 11 millimeters. Now, once you have it loose, you can use a regular wrench on it. Probably a lot easier and faster. Go ahead and pull the bolt off the back. That should make things a little bit easier. Okay, there's that. Boy, we made quite a mess. Now let's get something on this. Holy cow, this thing's leaking like a sieve. There we go. Well, that did make a mess though. All right, with that cylinder out, let's go ahead and get this clean. Now that we have this all clean, let's go ahead and put in our new cylinder here. I'm going to do that same trick and pull off the bleeder here so that I can actually get a wrench on the actual pressure line. Now, interestingly, these are a different size. The other ones, the originals were 7 and these are 8. Okay, we can fit this up here. We just need to put our little bolt on the back. We'll tighten that down. Okay, it feels pretty good. Okay, there we go. This guy and snug it up. Okay, that feels good. Let's get that bleeder back in. Holy cow, we got fluid going everywhere. So I think taking the bleeder out certainly does make it a lot easier to get that connection in, but just be okay with a bunch of brake fluid kind of going everywhere. We'll have to clean all this up again. With our new wheel cylinder in, let's get to lubing up the parts that need it. That would be the stars and any place that our brake pads are going to move around. These areas here and these connection points here, and of course on the stars themselves. So let's start with the stars. You can use a little bit of never sleaze on this. You don't want to put too much on, and that's plenty. You really don't want that much. We'll just screw these guys on like this, yay. And I run them all the way down, and then we're going to hit the barrel of this as well. Okay, and kind of spin them around a little bit before they get stuck on the little keep. All right, and then push them in. And on these adjusters, there's a high side and a low side. So this slot that is cut at an angle, we want the low side to face towards the center and the high side to face towards the outside. And we're just putting a small amount on here, not much at all. We can hit these places here, 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 and here where the pads actually slide a little bit. It's not super critical, and you certainly don't want to put too much on there at all. And then our pads as well, we're going to contact the cylinder up at the top, and this little tab down at the bottom is going to ride on the stars. Once again, just a kiss, just the teeniest little bit. The next thing we want to do is to install the parking brake lever on this thing. You don't want to forget that. If you do, you won't have a parking brake. Now it just kind of hooks in here like that, so you know its orientation, and it goes in this top hole at the top of our brake pad. We've added a little bit of never sleaze in here just to give it a little bit of lubrication. Also, there's a floppy washer I neglected to show. Now that washer can be underneath the head of the pin or What I did was to put it between the arm and the brake shoe. That gives it a little bit more movement and a little less rubbing on the actual brake shoe. The pin goes through, and on the back side is this kind of funky clip here. And we just press that over the slot that's in here and pull it closed with our pliers. There, like that. But we're not really done, because that certainly wasn't difficult to get on. We need to pinch these two little ears together in order to get this to really set. And that can be quite a bear. So we can use our pliers here like this. Pull this together a little bit. There we go. Okay, our little keeper there is clamped down. It's still good and loose, and this feels like it's going to move really easily. That's a good thing. We can take our new pads here and just fit them. Make sure we've got everything right. Yep, that looks pretty good. Next, I'm going to add the springs. So the bigger one, they're not that different actually. They're pretty similar. But the bigger one, the brown one, it's a little bit longer and a little bit thicker, is going to go on this hole here, like that. And the littler one goes on this hole here. And you know, I was thinking about this as I did the front ones, and I had them kind of hooked together and then I put the pins in, but I think it's probably going to be a lot easier to put the pins in without the springs hooked up to anything. So let's go ahead and get our pin in on this side. Now's a good time to hook up our parking brake lever. Fit that through the slot there. Now our little small spring came off. That's okay. It just goes right here. And we don't want to forget to put our spanner in. This is what makes the parking brake work. It fits up here into the slot. It goes here like that. Then we can fit our other pad up here like that. We also need to get our springs in. Normally I like to put the springs in and then just sort of work the pads up and over, but this is going to be very difficult to do with this top one because of our spanner. So we'll put that one on a little bit later, but I think we can hook our bottom one on. So we'll do that, and that'll help actually pull things together a little bit too. There, like that. Go ahead and get our pin and cap in on this side. That leaves this spring up here. This is going to be a bear to get on. There we go. All right. Next we have this little clip here that needs to clip on the bottom of the spreader and then grab the spring up here on the top. So it looks like this, and we try to work this guy up. There we go. There it goes. Snapola. Everything looks really good here. I'm just double checking our spanner, make sure it's in the right spot. Our parking brake lever works. Yep, that looks good. Adjusters are all the way in. One thing to double check is our little tab there. It needs to be crossways to the slot, and it is. And same thing over here. At this point, we can do a little bit of house cleaning. Clean our pads here just to make sure we didn't get any grease or anything on them. And finally, our drum as well needs to be cleaned. Because even if you didn't get your grimy little hands all over this like I have, it still has some machining oil from the factory when they built these things. So we just want it super duper clean. With that nice and clean, I do want to put just a little bit of grease on the spline. We don't want it getting into the brake system at all, but we also don't want this thing corrosion welding itself together. You know, and here's a thought as well. I've got my camera here, and since we're going to be covering this up, probably a good idea to take a couple of shots of it finished. That way, if there's any questions, if you're like, oh, did I remember the little clip that goes over the spring? Oh, did I get the brake lever put together properly? Oh, what about these springs? Oh, what hole did I put these springs on? All those sorts of questions. You'll have a good image of it, so you don't have to take the whole drum off again. At this point, we're happy. Let's go ahead and hoist the brake drum up. These things are heavy. Fit it over the spline. There it goes. You might have to move the pads around a little bit if they feel like they're just sort of contacting on one side. Down a little bit maybe. There we go. And that's that. Roll our castle nut on. This is a quick recap of the entire process. We're going to start with the bearings as we did in the last episode. And once all the bearings are finished, then we'll get on to the brakes. And this is just a repeat of everything you've seen, just seeing it all together. Well, I've nipped this castle nut up a bit just to pull the axle in, and I feel that it's seated, but how do we get this to the required, it's like 225 foot-pounds of torque. It's a lot. So how do we do that? Well, we could put the wheel on, lower the car, use a big old guy like this, a big breakover bar, and put something on it. But you're never gonna really know what torque you really got it to. So I'm gonna use the same tool that we used to get these bolts off. These things are awesome. So this torque multiplier guy goes on like this, and this guy sits on here like this. It works great. Now also, inside here, you're kind of wondering, okay, well, you still have to torque it, so what do you set your torque wrench to? Well, it says for right here, it really tells you, it's perfect. It says 25 foot-pounds if you want to torque up to 225. So that works really, really well. So that's what I've set my torque wrench to, is 25 foot-pounds, because this is supposed to be about 225, I believe. And we'll go ahead and torque this wheel in. Watch how this works, this is awesome. So the first thing we have to do is to mount this guy up here, and then we want to set this guy on the actual castle nut, and we're going to be rotating this way, so clockwise. So we can start up here. We've got our torque wrench, and we just keep going around here. And the cool thing is you don't even have to lock the drum. You just kind of hold it. The tool does all the work. Alright, get to the end here, pull this off, move it back to this side. There we go. And that's it. We are torqued. It's incredible. It's really, really pretty cool. Well, this is actually a castle nut, so we do have a big cotter pin we have to put on, and the holes are in different places, so you just kind of work around until you find it, and it works out that, look at that. So perfect. So all we have to do is bend our cotter pin and we're done. Well, and that's it. We've got our wheel bearings done, and we have our brakes in the back. We replaced our brake cylinder, all of our pads, all the bits, all the bearings, all the everything. So this really feels nice, and like the other one, absolutely no movement, which is super awesome. Well, we still have our CV joint, which is sitting up here, but I think I mentioned before, got some leaks on the transaxle there, and I'm probably going to end up taking the whole axle actually completely out. I think the output shafts are leaking, so we're going to have to remove the CV joints from the flange and then pull the flange out and replace those seals. All right, I think that's going to be quite a job. Our first step is going to be to clean this thing. It's a grimy mess, and I don't want to take the CV joint off if it's really dirty. Also, we're going to have to lock that thing down so we can pull those bolts off as well. So I need that thing clean. So that's going to be step one. All right, well, we got everything pretty well cleaned, and I have a strap wrench here to hold the outside of the CV joint here so we can get these bolts off. Okay, that gives us a really good view of what we're looking at here. We've got this cover here. It's actually metal with rubber over it. In order to get our seal off, I've taken one of my old screwdrivers and ground it down to where it's pretty sharp at the end. Let's see if we can work that guy off. There it goes. All right, there we go. So not too bad. I didn't bugger it up too awfully bad up there. Okay. Well, we got a bit of fluid here too. And now you can see our next challenge. That's one of these circlips without any holes in it. So it's on the outside of this spline. We have to get that guy off. That's going to be a challenge. Well, this is a standard set of ring pliers here. As you pull them together, they open up. These are for outside, so they're kind of right. But if you look at the ends, of course, they're just 2 pins, and they're going to slide off of that clip. Really, the correct tool for the job here actually has flat, almost like paddles on each side that are sort of ribbed. So you've got your pins sort of like this, and you come up to it, and instead of this thing just sliding off every time, the paddles will hold on to it and you can pull them apart. So I don't have one of those, so let's give this a try. I think if we use this in concert with a screwdriver, we should be able to get it off. All right, so if we just try to splay it out, we can get a screwdriver underneath this on the bottom. It just is, what it's going to do is slide underneath. So there we go. We've got the screwdriver on there now, and we'll try to work the ring out. There it goes. Snappy, snappy. Now we should be able to pull this guy out. All right, looking at this surface here, it looks pretty good. I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. Whoa, we're leaking though. Next, I'm going to try and get that seal out with our super neato seal removal tool here. Hopefully it'll pull out. There we go. Yeah. Yeesh. All right. Holy cow. Well, that was a little nutty, but I did get it out. The tool did work in the end. Woo! Holy cow, that was something. Okay, so the trick to this tool is once you kind of figure out exactly what the alignment needs to be, where this guy needs to be and this guy needs to be, lock them down. So my problem was every time I was pushing on it, this thing would turn or this would slide down. So I'd lock them down much better, and that helped a lot. And then I just kind of, I'm not super strong, but I just kind of kept at it and it did pull it out. Well, you'll see what looks like another clip ring here all the way back. I believe it's just a spacer. See if I can pull it out and show you what it looks like. And this is it. It's just sitting in there. It's not clipped on anything, and I think that's normal. It looks like it has a little bit of a bend in it. Can you see that? So I think it's just basically a floppy washer, just to provide a little more tension on the bearing back there. And obviously we're dripping a little bit of fluid through here. That's fine. That's to be expected. I have our new seal here. I have a 36mm socket that seems like it's going to fit pretty well as a drift to push it in. So let's go ahead and get this guy in. All right, that's our new seal. Yeah, there we go. Push it a little bit to get it started. I cleaned up the flange quite a bit. It was pretty gross and pretty dirty. I'm really most interested in this surface here, and it feels nice and smooth, which is great. Any nicks in that and our whole seal thing will be for naught. So this feels great. Let's go ahead and reinstall this. All right, pretty simple. Just put this guy back on, really. There it goes. It seats all the way. Now, if you don't have your seal all the way in, you won't be able to get your circlip on. But it looks like I can see the notch under there, so I think we're good there. And here's what I was talking about with those 2 points on the end of this. There's no holes for this to go into. So you kind of have to catch it here and then try to expand it, but it's always going to want to move to the inside. There it goes, yep. All right. Now I'm thinking that clip's not all the way down, so let's go ahead and convince it. There we go. Snappy, snappy. That looks great. Make sure it's in all the way around. Yep, that looks great. All right. We've got our new seal in. It looks great, and it looks like we're not leaking anymore. And the last thing we don't want to forget to install is our little dust cap here, and it's not really so much a dust cap as it is an oil cap. Remember when we took this apart that there was a good bit of oil here that sort of poured out? There's a reason for this little guy, and that is to keep oil from the transaxle flowing into the CV joint and washing it out. So these are important to put back. This is a new one. You just sort of tap it into place. All right, and then just feel all the way around, make sure it's seated all the way. This feels great. We're all set here. I'm gonna finish cleaning this up a little bit just so we can be absolutely sure after we run the car around a bit. Then I need to get to the other side as well. So I'll go ahead and do the exact same process here. Pull the CV joint off and then pull that flange out, pull the seal out, replace the seal, put it all back together. Well, I wanted to show you the complete rebuild of these CV joints, but ran into a bit of a snag. So the balls in this thing were pretty chewed up and the runs were bad as well. So the long and the short of it was the CV joints were really just not worth rebuilding. So we ended up getting a new set of CV joints with the axle, and these aren't that expensive. They're only about $80 for the whole set. That's 2 CV joints plus the axle already assembled, already greased, all ready to install in the car. So with a part that cheap, it really does make you sort of think through this whole process. This is a lot of work to clean these things. They're pretty grimy, they're pretty dirty, and you don't know what you're going to get after an hour or more of cleaning these things and disassembling them. So I don't know, you can decide what you want to do on your car, but at 80 bucks, and since ours are, I believe, to be original and completely worn out, this was kind of the best option. Okay, well this episode's getting a little long in the tooth, so I'm going to cut it off here. In the next episode, we're going to install our axles, and then we're going to get back to the brakes. So we installed all the bits in the brakes, but we have to bleed the lines, and then we have to adjust the brakes. So that's coming up. All right, well, thank you so much. If you've got any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below and I'll get right to them. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now because we've got lots more content coming up. I still have quite a bit of work to do on the Beetle, and the new interior is coming for the 911, so that's gonna be super fun. Oh, and the transmission's back, yay! So you're not going to want to miss any of that. All right, well, thank you so much, and as always, a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. Until next time, safe travels, bye!